Good evening. This is Donna from the LaSalle Public Library welcoming you to tonight's virtual program. Tonight we'll be welcoming once again Lisa Sons. Lisa will be talking to us about birding this winter and about making appetizing bird feeders for our friends and to keep the birds around with us through the cold months. Before we start, I just wanted to mention again two upcoming programs that we have. Our next one is Leslie Goddard. She'll be talking about Betty Crocker and her cookbook that changed the way America cooks. This program is just in time for all of us who are dragging out our cookbooks in time for holiday meals. This will be at a different time. It's at Saturday at 2 p.m. on December 19th. So if you're interested in listening to that one, we'd love to have you join us on Saturday, December 19th, 2 p.m. Our next program after that will be after the holidays and into the new year on January 12th, again a Tuesday evening at 6 o'clock with botanist Chris Benda. This is a really unusual program about the historic values of Illinois prairies and some of the rare plants that now can only be found in very special places, especially in pioneer cemeteries that date back to the early 1800s. We're very lucky to have two right in our area here in central Illinois, and we'd love to have you join us for that. It's something to know about and an unusual topic. So that's in the new year. And without any more time, let's go right to Lisa. Lisa?
Well, we are starting to see less and less of our migratory birds as most of them have moved through. There's still some of the sandhill crane still hanging around, and we're starting to see more of the finches that have gone through what we know of as an eruption, meaning that they are short migrants looking for food sources. So a lot of the conifers and other pine trees haven't been producing enough of a cone crop for them, say in Canada and the northern United States. So some of that population, such as our evening grosbeaks and the pine siskins and such, have been moving down into our area looking for food sources. And then we're going to talk about some of our basic backyard birds and how to start bird watching. So first thing I want to start off with is that backyard birding is for everyone. I always tell folks that come into the Starved Rock Visitor Center, because we have binoculars that are on loan to the public, all you need to do is drop off a driver's license and have it back before 4 p.m., that not to be intimidated by bird watching. If you want to get started, then by all means, get started. You can check out different visitor centers or state parks or even national parks in your vicinity, as well as different Audubon clubs, and see if someone will take you out and teach you some of the basics. That's how I learned. I basically graduated in '99 with a forestry degree. So I was all about trees and plants. Never thought of myself as a birder. And one of my first jobs out of college was as a naturalist for the National Audubon at Corkscrew Swamp Sanctuary in Naples, Florida. And I remember one of the volunteers, his name was Mac. He kind of took me underneath his wing, and he actually even gave me a pair of his binoculars, like his secondary pair, and taught me how to become a birder, how to listen for different bird calls, notice the different habitats and how some birds won't live in this habitat as opposed to other birds that will. And then one of the other volunteers, her name was Sue, and I remember she always had a walking stick with her, and the top of it was carved like a pileated woodpecker. She taught me how to bird by ear, how to listen for the different calls and where they were coming from. Were they coming from the ground? Were they coming from the understory where the bushes are? Or are they coming from the canopy? So definitely join one of those Audubon groups, or if you know of someone that likes to bird, ask them if you can just go with them one day. And if you know of different visitor centers or state parks like Starved Rock that loan out binoculars, take them up on that. You can easily watch YouTube videos online. You can download instructions from Pinterest or online. Or like I said, if you go with someone that birds, you can learn the basics of how to operate binoculars. So basically, if you're going to start backyard birding, tools needed, as I mentioned, binoculars, and a bird identification key or guide. So this can be one of the many books that are available at Amazon, different bookstores online. You can also find different gift shops at state or national parks, or even some nature centers or visitor centers at different parks and forest preserves. I know at Starved Rock State Park, we have almost a whole wall dedicated to different bird guides. And the one I typically use is the Peterson guide. And that stays in my car basically with my binoculars. There's also different phone apps you can download onto your smartphone that will help you with immediate pictures that you can pull up. But some of those apps, you kind of have to already know what you're looking at. The benefit of having a field guide is that you can use the key and you can key it out from the types of wing bars they have, the type of beak that it has, to the type of feet, or even the type of habitat that you're finding it in. You can bird basically from anywhere. You can bird from your car as long as you're not the one that's driving, or if you are driving, make sure that you pull over first. And what I found on days where I really don't feel like hiking, I don't want to be stuck in the house, I just like traveling some of the backcountry roads within my neighborhood or LaSalle County here in Illinois. And it doesn't matter what time of year, I always end up finding something. Right now, I know a lot of my birder friends have been spotting, of course, red-tailed hawks high up in the telephone poles along the field edges, as well as some of the snowy owls coming down into this area looking for food. And just last Saturday, I went out to Dixon Waterfowl Refuge in Hennepin, Illinois, and I went at dusk because I knew that short-eared owls were coming out this time of year, and there are actually several other birders that were out there. So we found about four different short-eared owls out there, and Dixon Waterfowl keeps their gates open right now around dusk because bird watchers want to notice those short-eared owls. This time of year, you can also find a lot of horned larks along the roadways, and we'll be looking at some pictures later on. You can bird from a boat, so maybe you're an avid kayaker or you have your own canoe, or maybe you like to head out in your John boat for some fishing. Grab a pair of binoculars and your bird guide, and that is another pastime. I know some of my friends are avid kayakers, and they also take their photography equipment with them, and they've been able to spot quite a few waterfowl species, different types of ducks, geese, herons, and egrets while they're canoeing or kayaking. Some of you might just want to pick up a hobby at home. I know a lot of us right now are quarantining or isolating at home, and you want to pick up a new hobby, something that you can do from the safety of your home. And my in-laws actually used to enjoy bird watching from their kitchen window. They set up their bird feeders just outside of their kitchen window and would spend mornings having coffee and a Danish while watching for birds. And here at our house, we have our bird feeders set up just outside of our sliding glass doors off the kitchen, so we can easily watch from the windows as well. Backyard, if you have a backyard, you can set up different feeding stations and watch or walk around the perimeter of the backyard and look for different birds especially if you have landscaping that can support birds, different bushes and trees for areas for them to hide and roost. Neighborhood, maybe you can take a walk around town or visit a park in town and do some bird watching. Maybe you like to go camping. Don't forget those binoculars and that bird guide while you go camping. And I think the fun thing about bird watching while camping is that if you're camping in another state or another region, a lot of bird watchers have what are called lifers. These are birds that they haven't seen before, or they might be a rarity that they only venture through this region once in a great while, or if, say, wildfires in the west or wind currents have pushed them off course. And then even if you live in a busy town or a city, don't feel intimidated or daunted that you're not going to see birds. You would not believe how many bird species just drop out of the sky and land on the sidewalk in the middle of Chicago, such as king rails and Virginia rails, peregrine falcons. Chicago is set up right along the Mississippi Flyway, especially along Lake Michigan. So there are quite a few hot spots in and around the Chicago area. So definitely talk to your local Audubon club or follow the Illinois Birding Network online to see what the different birding hotspots are in your area. Don't be afraid to talk to your local naturalists or park rangers and see what recommendations they have. Again, like I mentioned, bird watching can be done anytime. Summer, fall, winter, and spring, you're always going to find something. Rain, snow, or sunshine. And this is available to anyone. This is a hobby that anyone can pick up, whether you are an older adult, you're in your teens, or maybe you want to take your children bird watching and teach them the joys of bird watching. I have a friend who lives in New Mexico, and she started teaching her daughter how to bird watch from the age of 3 or 4. And I remember a video she posted on Facebook. Her daughter was fishing, and fishing is what we call a noise to attract certain birds. Usually sparrows and finches are the most attracted to it. It's just you're making that fishing noise. And she's already picked up how to use binoculars. So it's something that anyone can pick up. And also, regardless of mobility issues, again, you can bird from your car, from the boat, from your window at home. And then, like I mentioned, get involved. Join your local Audubon club. Attend online webinars and classes like this one. So let's talk about some of the winter feathered friends we'll see at our feeders this time of year. Blue jays are coming through, and I know a lot of folks absolutely love the blue jay for both its size, its character, behavior, and the color. So blue jays, to me, I always call them the tattletale of the woods, because they always say their name, Jay, Jay, Jay. And I always feel that when I'm hiking through the woods and it's quiet and I'm trying to look for wildlife or different animals and different animal homes, if there's a blue jay around, he is going to tattle on me, and he's going to tell everybody else that I'm walking through. It never fails. The cardinal, Illinois state bird. That bright red color and that cheerful song. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of black-capped chickadees on my feeders, and they say their name as well. Chickadee dee 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 dee. And of course, the dark-eyed junco. If any of you are Game of Thrones fans, you know the saying of Game of Thrones, winter is coming. Whenever I see a dark-eyed junco, I know winter is coming. They come down from Canada and the northern United States into our area during winter to search for food. and they'll hang out at your feeders. They're mainly a ground feeder. So if you have ground feeders or birdseed that's spilled out of your feeders onto the ground, these guys are going to be hopping around it. Sorry, it's replaying all the calls. There we go. Some more winter feathered friends. Right now, I know a lot of my friends on Facebook that are fellow bird watchers or just love nature overall have been commenting on hearing great horned owls in their neighborhood. So this time of year, the great horned owls are starting to communicate a little bit more than normal. This is usually when they start pairing up again, and then they'll mate over winter and usually already be sitting on the nest into January and February, depending on where you live. And we have a pair of great horned owls that have nested here on our property for about the past 7 years. I have not found the nest, but I'm in no hurry to find the nest. I don't want to stress them out. That's one thing you want to remember. As a birder, you never want to compromise the bird's behavior or their habitat. They're simply out there just trying to find food, trying to live their lives. So you never want to get too close or do anything to disturb them or cause them any aggravation. So our great horned owl friend here, this is the typical hoo, hoo, hoo that we think of when we think of owls. It's not playing loud enough. Let's do that again. For some reason that didn't record loud enough. Let me see if I can find one real quick. Okay, here we go. Okay, and then I mentioned earlier the horned lark. I typically find these guys in small groups along the roadsides, especially the backcountry roads. They're going to be feasting on that side gravel, sometimes out in the fields. And I always love being able to find them because I just love their little feathers here on top of their head that make them look like they have horns, hence their name. So definitely look for them on the sides of country roads as well as different fields in the wintertime. Okay, and then some of you might have already started to notice these guys on your feeders. They're attracted to the black oil sunflower seeds, as well as other finches such as the house finch and some of the evening grosbeaks that have come down from the northern United States and Canada. This is the pine siskin. And they're also going to be attracted to some of the smaller seeds like your Niger and your millet. And then the mourning dove. They'll hang around usually on the ground with the extra seed that is spilled over. And of course, they also say their name. They're basically mourning. Okay, house sparrows. I have a ton of house sparrows hiding in our bushes around our patio that frequent our feeders. And then it's very important this time of year to put out suet or suet cakes or make your own at home. You will attract woodpeckers, such as the downy woodpecker here. They're the smallest woodpecker found here in Illinois. And this is a male because it has this little red cap here on the top of its head. And they are attracted to suet because they're insect eaters. That's why they are drilling away at trees, mainly dead trees or diseased trees that have decomposers inside, different insects that are breaking down that woody material. Woodpeckers are attracted to that, can hear and feel the vibrations behind the bark. So insects, being a form of meat, is what attracts woodpeckers to suet in the wintertime, because suet is also fatty oils and things like that that attract them for that protein. Another woodpecker is the red-bellied woodpecker. Now they're larger, so if you hold up your hand from the base of your palm to the tip of your middle finger, that's going to be about a basic size for a red-bellied woodpecker. The males have red from the nose all the way back to the nape of their neck. The females will not have that much red. Their red will start right about their eye and end before the base of their nape of their neck. And red-bellied are going to be attracted to suet. Sometimes they'll take advantage of seed, not too often. In the spring and summer, red-bellieds will actually visit your oriole feeders if you put out oranges and grape jelly. So I guess they're an opportunistic feeder. White-breasted nuthatch, we have quite a few of these at the park and here at my house. I think it's comical because they get used to you. Both the downy woodpeckers, the white-breasted nuthatches, and the black-capped chickadees, they get accustomed to whoever's feeding them, whoever's putting the food out, and they won't venture far. And actually, the nuthatches at work at the park, I usually feed Wednesday, Fridays, and Sundays. I fill our feeders, and they're just constantly chattering at me like they see me coming, and it's constant yak, 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 like feed me, feed me, feed me, lady. And they will frequent both the suet, the wild bird feed, as well as the black oil sunflower seeds. And they will have little hidey holes where they'll take the seed and carry it to the hidey hole. Sometimes they'll take advantage of deeply furrowed bark, like the bark on a red oak or a white oak, like a bur oak, and they'll jam that black oil sunflower seed in between the crevices of that bark. And they use it as a vise so they can then hit at it with their beak to pop it open for the inside seed. So they're a neat little bird. Okay, now their cousin, which is about half the size, the red-breasted nuthatch, comes down from the north this time of year. And I've had a few of these hanging out at my feeders here at home. Almost sounds like a duck, doesn't it? And then the hairy woodpecker is going to be between the size of a red-bellied and the smaller downy woodpecker. And you'll see them occasionally on your suet feeders. As I mentioned earlier, if you take some of those country drives and do some bird watching from the car, you're going to notice this time of year red-tailed hawks perched on the telephone poles or on those woodland tree edges bordering fields. they are taking advantage of their excellent eyesight and predatory skills as birds of prey, looking for anything scurrying across those fields or out of the grassy ditches by the roads, such as mice, chipmunks, squirrels, you name it. And once you learn the call of a red-tailed hawk, any movie or TV show about nature or utilizing something outside with birds, or even a bald eagle in the movie or TV show, is never going to be the same. Because for some reason, Hollywood always uses the call of the red-tailed hawk for the eagle. Probably because they think it sounds fierce or intimidating. And then there's the bald eagle that's 2 to 3 times the size of a red-tailed hawk. Our nation's symbol, wingspan of 6.5 to 8 feet. And they're a very dominant type bird of prey. You know when they're there. And their call is the opposite of what you would think of for their size and their presence. People get a kick out of it at the park when I lead them on eagle tours and play the call. Basically sounds like somebody tapping and screeching on a chalkboard. Right now at Starved Rock, we've had anywhere from 5 to 17 bald eagles frequenting the area along the Illinois River. Just today, my husband and I were coming back from an appointment crossing the 251 bridge there from Peru into Oglesby, and there were 2 bald eagles, most likely a pair, right there on the east side of the river, perched in the trees. I know at the park, people have been spotting them along what we call the wide waters, where the Illinois River basically spreads out there on the east side along Route 71 by what we call Lone Point Shelter. And a few folks have been spotting them from our overlooks, such as Starved Rock itself, Lover's Leap, and Eagle Cliff. So if you have a waterway nearby, definitely call that park or nature center or check it out to see if any eagles are hanging out in the trees there. They need open water this time of year. That's why we see more eagles come down near us here along the Illinois River, because we have a series of 8 locks and dams. We're number 5 at Starved Rock, and that lock and dam keeps the water churning and it never fully freezes over. So it's like an instant fish buffet for the bald eagles, which is their primary food source. I've already had some folks online post that they are seeing and hearing more screech owls this time of year. Screech owls will typically inhabit wood duck boxes, especially along woodland edges. And they come in 2 phases, both the red phase and the gray phase pictured here. And their call, there's different calls. And one of them sounds like almost like a horse whinnying to me. And sometimes people think it sounds like a ghost. Then barred owls. Barred owls are roughly going to be the same size as a red-tailed hawk. So about 1.5 feet tall, whereas the great horned owl is 2 feet tall. And the barred owl, I think, is very comical because they basically say, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all? And I've tried to mimic the barred owl call before, and my husband just tells me I sound like a monkey, so I've given up. but I hear both the barred owl and the great horned owl quite a bit at the park. I have never heard a screech owl at the park, but I have heard screech owls here at home. And we used to have a gray phase screech owl that lived in our wood duck box. I haven't seen him in a few years though. Turkey, a lot of folks are seeing turkey this time of year in groups of turkey. And we see them quite a bit at the park, especially along the south entrance early in the morning or right when we're leaving in the evening. And you might occasionally, depending on where you live, actually see a turkey come through your yard. We had a female turkey come through our yard a few years back, and they will actually take advantage of some of that bird seed that's fallen from the bird feeders onto the ground. Eastern bluebird is one of my favorite songbirds of all times. And a lot of folks think that they migrate in winter. Depending on the weather and the food sources, a lot of birds are just short migrants. They will just fly short distances, stay within that same state, within that same region, as long as they can find food. That's their one main goal. And I know that every winter when I do the Matheson bird count for the Audubon, we pick up pockets of bluebirds, especially out by our horseback campground there at Matheson. So they do hang around. I've seen at least 2 of them here in our backyard that have hung around this winter so far. And Walmart's and Farm and Fleet, I'm not sure about Menards, they do carry mealworm suet cakes. And mealworm suet cakes will attract the bluebirds. Your tufted titmice will enjoy those, as well as your downy woodpecker and your red-bellied woodpecker and your nuthatches. I put a mealworm suet cake out 2 weeks ago and it was gone within 3 days. Ringneck pheasants, they are not technically native to Illinois. They not native to North America actually, but they have filled an important niche from the greater prairie chicken and some of the quail niches. We do still get bobwhite quail at Matheson and Starved Rock State Park, but they're not as common. I did actually see a ringneck pheasant, the male, which is on the left there, Friday when I was leaving work. It was crossing from one cornfield to the next there outside of Matheson State Park. A lot of folks do breed pheasants. American tree sparrows, besides the house sparrows, these are going to be the next common sparrow that you find within your landscaping in winter and sometimes at your feeders. They have this significant reddish brown striped head. Then the snowy owl. This time of year, a lot of birders are on the lookout for snowy owls in the farm fields along marsh or wetland areas. They predominantly hunt for duck, but they will also hunt for chipmunks, squirrels, mice, whatever they can get their beaks and talons on. And this here is actually a female. Female will have darker coloration than the males. Some males will appear pure white. And like I mentioned earlier, they are coming down this time of year to basically find food. And they're traveling extremely long distances from Canada and north of Canada. They're looking for food. So a lot of them are coming in extremely tired and weary and emaciated. A lot of the wildlife rehabilitators from Wisconsin all the way down through Illinois this time of year are getting a lot of phone calls on earlier migratory birds and now on owls. They have that bark you can hear in the background. Another bird that you'll find easily enough this time of year, especially in the open fields and those woodland edges, is the northern harrier. And the female will sometimes have a very dark or gray coloration and is known as the gray ghost because of how they silently leave a tree and just glide along those field edges, usually anywhere from 5 feet to 10 feet above the field. And when I was out at Dixon Waterfowl Refuge last weekend waiting for the short-eared owls, I counted about six or seven northern harriers between that time span of 2 p.m. to about 3:30 p.m. And it's almost as they're changing the guards. The northern harriers are saying, okay, we're done hunting for the day. It's your guys' turn. And the short-eared owls come out. All right, some facts about birds in winter. How do birds handle the cold weather? I asked this of myself when I was younger. I couldn't understand. Aren't they cold out there? You know, should we bring them in? And my mom would say, no, we're not bringing the birds in. They are fine. They're wild animals that can take care of themselves. Well, as I got older and I started learning more about the natural world, both through school and my hobbies, their feathers actually serve as insulation. And it makes sense because a lot of the coats that we buy or comforters or even pillows, down, comes from geese. That's their feathers, their insulation. And when they're puffed up in winter, when you see them on a tree branch and you see them all puffed up, it's what they're doing is that they're creating warm air pockets in between those feathers. And that actually keeps their body temperature stable. They also have specialized veins and arteries that act as a heat exchange between their feet and legs. So cold blood can come back up to be rewarmed throughout the body as warm blood comes back down. They roost in groups. So I know on the bird count in winter, a lot of times we'll see bluebirds or tufted titmice roosting in groups to keep warm. And they're able to turn down their body temperature at night. And I just found this comic funny that I found on the bald eagles. Okay, some winter habitat needs. So if you're wondering how can I attract birds to my backyard? Well, you always want to think about habitat needs in regards to wildlife. Do you have proper cover and shelter for them? Shelter from the elements, shelter from predators that might prey on them. So think about different native bushes, such as witch hazel, chokecherry or chokeberry, American holly. Trying to think of some others. There's oak hydrangea, different things like that that'll provide them that shelter. And some of those mentioned will also provide them food in the form of berries. A water source. So if you don't have a creek, a river, lake, or pond within your neighborhood or your town, you're going to want to think of another water source that you can provide. Maybe it's a bird bath. And there are different types of portable heaters that are on the market now and extremely affordable. There's several that I found on Amazon alone that you can actually put into the bird bath that keeps the water from freezing. And as I mentioned earlier, those natural food sources. If you don't have the availability of those natural food sources or berry producing bushes that are native to the area in your yard, you can put out feeders and different types of food to attract those birds to your backyard. And different feeders will attract different types of birds. So the bottom left-hand corner, a ground feeder, that is going to attract a lot of your finches and sparrows. Sometimes, depending on where you live or the time of year, you're going to attract blackbirds, red-winged blackbirds or starlings, your mourning doves, and of course, not a bird, but a mammal, our lovely squirrels. Here in the bottom right is a Niger sock. This has Niger seed or millet seed in it for finches, such as the goldfinches pictured here. And then up top is a type of suet feeder, and you have a little downy woodpecker clinging to the metal grate there and picking away at the suet or seed cakes. Here at home, we have an old metal post in the ground. Some of you might recognize these from the old style clotheslines. And my husband put an old metal wagon wheel on the top of it. And then from the wagon wheel, the different spokes, we have metal carabiners that are holding our metal feeders that are squirrel proof, or at least they claim they are. They're really not. And we have two of those, one with black oil sunflower seeds, the other one with mixed wild bird seed. And then we have a suet cake. We don't really have any luck ourselves with the finch socks, the Niger socks, but just across town, my husband's mother in the past used to put them out, and she used to get a ton of goldfinches, but for some reason we just don't. And then we put a baffle on about 4 feet up from the bottom of the ground around the post. And the baffle is basically a type of cone, and the cone prevents the squirrels from climbing up the post. And squirrels can only jump 4 feet up from the ground, so that blocks them. They're not able to get to the feeders. And then squirrels, you want to make sure wherever you place your feeder, it's not too close to a tree, because squirrels can jump from sturdy branches or a tree trunk up to 10 feet away to get onto your feeders. So just something to keep in mind. Okay, then at the park, we do have a tube feeder. It's about twice the size of the one pictured here on the bottom right. And I mainly put the finch seed mix in the tube feeder. So it has Niger and millet in it. And we've learned to space out the brackets where the birds sit. We put them closer together because when I had them further apart, the starlings and red-winged blackbirds were taking advantage and basically emptying the whole feeder, or to the point that they'd flock it so much that they'd drop the feeder would fall off the clip. So you want to be mindful of that. A hopper feeder like the one pictured on the upper left, we just had a volunteer at our park, Alan Clark, who built one for us out of cedar, and he just did a fabulous job. It's a beautiful feeder, and we desperately needed one to replace the older version we had. The squirrels had just eaten the edges and it was in bad shape. Now the hopper feeder, depending on the seed, if you put wild bird food seed in it, you're going to attract everything and anything. If you put just black oil sunflower, during this time of year, you're going to attract other bird species, such as those evening grosbeaks that are coming in. And different stores, from Rural King to Farm and Fleet to Menards to Walmart, are going to carry a plethora of different bird food that you can choose from. It all depends on what you're willing to put out as feeders, how often you're willing to fill them, and in your budget. Your wild bird food is going to be more costly because of the mixture that goes into it, such as your safflower seeds, your sunflower seeds, cracked corn. Sometimes wild bird food has the millet and the Niger already in it. Sometimes they actually put dried fruit in it as well. Your black oil sunflower is going to be the most affordable. That's not too expensive. I think for a 50-pound bag from Farm and Fleet, because I just ordered seed last week for the park, I want to say it was maybe $15. Maybe it wasn't even that expensive. Your suet cakes are going to run you anywhere from $2 to $10, depending on the size of suet and the types that you get. And suet comes in all different types of mixtures, from the basic fat protein mix that has sometimes peanuts in it, to another mix that'll have the wild bird seed mixed into it. And then the one that I mentioned earlier, the mealworms. And then sometimes we'll just make pressed seed cakes. And a lot of times those seed cakes are held together with different things. That could be high fructose corn syrup that's holding it together, sometimes honey. Feeders and food you can make at home. So if you don't want to go out, and a lot of us don't want to go out and about this time of year, you can easily make a bird feeder at home. This could be something that you do with your spouse, or you do with your kids, different family members that live with you. It could be a nice, fun activity. And if you're online, you could just easily do a Google search, DIY bird feeders, and it'll pull up so many different links from moms that are blogging about making bird feeders with their kids, to naturalists like myself that have made them for their nature centers or their parks, to just folks at home wanting something to do for the birds in their yard. And the one in the bottom right, the soda pop bottle, I have made a version of that, I think it was like 15 years in a row, for Boy Scout and Girl Scout groups. It just became second nature. Now, I did not use the wooden spoons. Instead, I used pencils. So the girls or the Boy Scouts would bring in old pencils that they no longer wanted to use. So we would reuse them as the perches. Sometimes I would use wooden skewers. Sometimes it was straws. So whatever you might have lying around home that you can, turn into a multi-purpose tool for a bird feeder. And you can either use scissors to cut the holes. I used a wood burner. Sometimes you can use the heat from the tip of a glue gun. Some folks might use a drill. So it's entirely up to you, but this is a very simple bird feeder to build, and I've built a lot of those. Others in fall might want to repurpose those pumpkins. Or maybe you just purchased an acorn squash or a butternut squash, and you've already carved out the inside and cooked it. But what do you do with the hull? What do you do with the outside? Well, you can repurpose it as a bowl, a container for that bird food, for that bird seed. Now, one thing you should be cautious about, depending on where you hang this, that squash or that pumpkin shell is also going to be a very tasty treat for your squirrel friends. So just keep that in mind. You can notice the upper left-hand corner is the shape of a bundt cake pan. So you can make suet cakes with any molds that you have at home. Maybe it's cookie molds. Maybe it's a cupcake pan. You just want to leave a hole in the center as you're making those, so you can tie string or sturdy ribbon through it to hang on the trees. And I have seen some folks online actually decorate their outside pine trees or spruce trees at Christmas time for the birds. They'll make little ornaments out of the shapes of cookie cutters and suet cakes. Now, the upper right-hand picture is very simple. This is something you can do with toddlers at home. And this is something that we are going to actually do together at this time. So I had sent an email to Donna to send out a list of supplies. And let's see if I can go to video. Okay. All right. So we are going to make the toilet paper tube suet feeder. It's very simple. I made these with some of our younger Daisy Girl Scouts, and they're kindergarten through first grade. So what you need a toilet paper roll, the cardboard insert. If you don't have that, you can use a paper towel roll and just cut it in thirds. Then I like to keep my work area nice and tidy. I worked for Girl Scouts for about 10 years of my life, and I think I'm still getting glitter out of my car from all those programs. So to keep it nice and tidy, I'm just using a basic baking sheet, and I just lay down a piece of wax paper. You don't have to if you don't want to. I have half a cup of peanut butter. Any peanut butter counts, but I probably wouldn't use some of the fancy peanut butter or the reduced fat or anything like that. Just basic peanut butter. This is going to be the protein source for the birds. And then I have a cup of mixed bird seed. This has black oil sunflower seeds, corn, safflower, and some millet in it. So first thing we are going to do is we are going to take our wild bird seed and we are going to spread it out on our baking sheet. I'm putting the camera down, see if you can watch me. Okay, so I've got it spread out. Next, you're also going to want a butter knife or a frosting knife or a spatula, something you have to spread the peanut butter. Take your toilet paper roll and your peanut butter, and you're just going to start frosting the outside of the peanut butter roll. Okay, so get all corners of it covered. Make sure you guys can see me. I hope you guys are doing this along with me and I'm not the only one. And yeah, it's going to get a little bit messy. You're going to get some peanut butter on your fingers. If you have peanut allergies at home, you can use sunflower butter. You can use almond butter. You can use cashew butter. So depending on your nut allergies at home, you have different alternatives. I know some folks have also used Crisco. If you're the type of person that cooks a lot of meat at home and you save the fat or the melted down fat from your cooking in a jar, you can use that. That's actually really good. Okay, so I think I've got this pretty well coated. All right, so probably I didn't use all of it, maybe a third of a cup, depending on how many of these you're gonna make. So now you're gonna take that and you are gonna roll it in your seed. Get that fully coated. You can press it down a little bit, make sure you're covering all areas. That millet seed will fill in some of those smaller gaps nicely. Now, once you have that done, you'll take a sturdy ribbon, or I just have basic baling twine here. And I always cut at least 2 feet in length. It's whatever your desired length needs to be. So I like to hang these from spruce and pine trees. I don't particularly like to hang them out on a naked limb without any leaves or needles, but that's up to you depending on where you want to hang it. That's just my preference. And you slide that twine through the middle of the toilet paper roll. And then you're going to tie a knot up at the top. You can do this before if you're going to hang it on a simple spruce or pine branch, or you can tie it after if you're going to a larger branch and you need to tie it actually on the branch while you're out there. And this will hang as is. And it's just very simple. It's just something fun you can do with the grandkids, the kids. Just something very easy, and the birds will love you for it. Okay. All right, let's see. Don't know why it's not letting me turn. Okay, so resources. Again, National Audubon Society website. I follow the National Audubon on Facebook, and then I do periodically check their website, and I use their website quite a bit when I'm planning programs or developing curriculum for park programs. Local Audubon chapters, you can go to www.illinoisaudubon.org and look up local chapters within Illinois. And this is usually true to form for most states in the US. And see if there's a local chapter that you'd like to join. A lot of times if you contact the chapter president and ask them if they're having any meetings, they'll let you come to a meeting ahead of time to decide if you want to join or not. Now at this time, due to COVID, I do know that they're not having any in-person meetings, but I do know that some are having Zoom or virtual meetings. Different apps on your phone, Merlin app for smartphones. I use the Merlin app quite a bit, but the downside is that you basically already have to have some birding skills to know what to type in to explore those different birds. It doesn't really have a true key to guide you through identifying. So I always recommend for beginning birders to get a field guide first, such as the Stokes Field Guide to the Birds of North America, or myself, I use the Peterson Field Guide. eBird, this again is an app for smartphones, and it's also a computer application online. This is more for advanced birders. I personally don't use eBird a lot. Basically, eBird is for birders who want to create their own bird lists. So they want to keep track of where they're birding, what species they found, what dates they found them, so they can track their progress. It also allows you to type in, say, I could have done it last Saturday and I could have typed in Dixon Waterfowl Refuge with the longitude and latitude coordinates and how many species of short-eared owl and northern harrier I found that day. And it'll record the date, and then it'll put a little pin drop in that area for others to view if they're birding within my area as well. Different guidebooks, like I mentioned, different bookstores, Amazon, different nature centers or parks that have gift stores will have different field guides as well. Cornell University Lab of Ornithology, their website is a plethora of information, and I use it all of the time when I'm putting together bird Facebook posts or bird programs for the park. Pinterest is basically when you want to look up those DIY feeders. Excuse me. And how to build them. Excuse me.
Along with Starved Rock and Matheson. You can also see the Master Gardener Program, contact information, Master Naturalist, and the website for Bureau, LaSalle, Marshall, and Putnam counties for the Extension Office. So this will also be on the library website along with the recording of this program. And we have a number of questions for you, Lisa. I'll give you just another minute. I'm going to do a couple more commercials here to give you a chance to get a drink.
Okay.
Lisa mentioned visiting the Dixon waterfowl area in Hennepin. In March, we are going to be hosting a program with 2 naturalists from the Dixon waterfowl area, just in time for spring and exploration of that wetlands area. So try to watch for us in March for that program. Now, are you ready for us yet, Lisa?
I am, thank you.
Okay, sure. We got a question here at the library for you. Could you first of all tell us what you would recommend for the magnification for birding binoculars?
It depends on what you're looking for. So if, say you're mainly looking for waterfowl or shorebird species, where you need a larger viewing area, I would recommend starting with 10 magnification by 40, or even 10 by 32. If you are looking more for something that's compact and that will travel easily, say if you're hiking or you're going to participate in a bird count, or you're looking for spraying warblers, which never sit still, I would recommend starting with an 8 magnification. 8 by 30 is a good beginner binocular, or an 8 by 40. And there's different brands that are out there. I know at the nature, or at the visitor center at the park, our foundation sells Vortex, and I'm going to grab those real quick to show you. So they had Vortex, and now this is a Vortex. I think this is Diamondback. These are actually my husband's. Mine are out in my car, but I usually steal his for inside the house. And binoculars can run you anywhere from a couple of $100 to a couple of $1,000. So it depends. I would always do your research, just like if you were going to buy a washer, dryer, or a TV. Binoculars are an investment. So make sure you've done your customer reviews and you've looked online at different sites. I have always coveted a pair of Zeiss binoculars, but I just can't afford them. But those are one of the top of the line binoculars out there. But Vortex is a very, very good brand as well. And it is more cost effective, I guess you could say.
Okay, that's great information. And I agree that you can find resources online. I happened to stumble upon information about binoculars when I was looking for telescope information. And one of the points that the lecturer made was that for birding, you want something that's lightweight, especially if you're hiking, or if you're, holding your arms up for a while, particularly looking for something. How does weight affect the kinds of binoculars you choose?
So if you're going to choose a 10 magnification by 30 or by 40, it's going to be a heavier binocular. And that was my original pair. I had mentioned that Volunteer Mac in Florida, when he had given me his secondary pair, that's what that was. Those were basically shorebird binoculars. And I remember when I was trying to do the bird count, and I was trying to count and locate all the spring warblers coming through, I tell you, I had a migraine at the end of the day, because those binoculars are so heavy and your neck's constantly going back and forward and left and right. So if you're not going to need those, I would definitely stick with that 8 magnification, and always get a neck strap. Most binoculars, when you purchase them, will come with a neck strap, but you can actually purchase separate neck straps that are better. I actually have a camera neck strap on my binoculars that's padded. Now, my friend Tom Williams, who's another birder, he has a neck strap, plus he also has a harness. So you can buy a harness that goes around your shoulders, and then strap your binoculars in across your chest. So it's just easy to grab and pop up and put down.
That's interesting. Yes. We'll look for that. Okay, we have a question in the chat. Where did you see short-eared owls?
Short-eared owls, keep in mind that a lot of species are threatened or endangered, or they're protected in some way. So typically, birders are pretty safeguarded about where they spot some of these species. You can go on to eBird and see what people have posted there. What I've learned is joining the Illinois Birding Network. A lot of times you can meet other birders and learn from them or where they've seen them. You want to keep in mind when you're bird watching to look for habitat. So what's the diet of that bird? Where does it specifically live? And short-eared owls are going to live in areas of prairies and meadows, especially wet prairies. So areas bordering along a river, a creek, or a wetland. So Dixon Waterfowl in Hennepin has that habitat there. So does Medeowin, National Tallgrass Prairie in Will County. So just look into some of your forest preserve districts and some of your parks. Talk to your park rangers or naturalists. But again, always be respectful and courteous whenever you're viewing wildlife, such as bird watching. You never want to get too close or endanger those animals or bother them in any way.
Okay, good advice. Here's a question from someone who puts out a suet feeder in the yard and noticed that the seed goes away really fast sometimes, but never sees any birds eating it. What could account for that?
Squirrels.
Squirrels? Okay.
Squirrels just eat everything.
Yes, they do.
Also, if the seeds are going away from the suet, and sometimes the suet is being left behind almost to the point where it looks like a honeycomb effect, that'll sometimes be your woodpeckers or your nuthatches that are digging it out and taking it back with them. But eventually they'll also eat that suet too.
Okay. All right. So thinking back at the Illinois River, what other birds can we expect to see on the water other than the gulls, the geese, and the eagles?
We still have white pelicans hanging around. Those are sometimes the bachelors that just didn't get the cue to fly off with the rest of the mated pairs that were coming back through and heading down south. You will still see great blue herons throughout the winter, not as many as you would in spring through fall, but we do occasionally get those on the winter bird count. Terns, you'll see some of the Foster and the Arctic terns coming through. We'll get those at Starved Rock, and you can view those from the top of the rock, and sometimes Lover's Leap and Eagle Cliff overlooks. Occasionally, we will get a golden eagle. I know last year, about mid-November, we had a golden eagle confirmed down around our boat ramp area. So occasionally they will come out. Other than that, along the river, we'll still have our wood ducks throughout winter, mallards. Right now, we're still holding on to most of our waterfowl, like canvasbacks, pintails, American coots, snow geese are coming through, Ross's geese are coming through, greater white-fronted geese are coming through. So different things like that on the river and in the wetlands like the Dixon Waterfowl area.
Okay. How far away from the windows in my home should I place feeders, and should I separate different types of feeders?
That is something I've questioned myself. I know I've seen online where you can purchase the feeders that directly directly suction cup to your windows. I think it's a personal preference. I don't personally like those feeders because I've had to put up window decals on our patio doors and our front large window in our living room because of bird crashes or window hits. So I personally don't like the suction cup feeders that go up on the windows. I would put your feeders anywhere from 5 feet or more away from your windows and glass doors.
Okay, good advice. I too have used, have currently used bird tape on all of my windows, and it really does help. It's an interesting way that doesn't even obstruct your view at all. It's very nice to use, and I'm glad for the birds. I have one last question, I think, for you, and it's my own. We put peanut butter cakes out, peanut butter Crisco, and then the seeds and the fruits mixed in for our birds. And someplace we know that xylitol is bad for dogs, so we assumed it was bad for birds just because. And a lot of the peanut butters do have that artificial sweetener in there. Should I be concerned about xylitol for birds?
That I don't know. That honestly, I would have to look up online. That's a good question though, but I don't know the answer to that.
Okay, well, we have been using various kinds of peanut butter, and those brands do not have xylitol, but just a FYI, you may want to look at the labels if anybody is using peanut butter out for feeders. And I think that's everybody's question. It's great, Lisa. We're all going to go and make more feeders and get them out there for the birds. Thank you again so much. You're so knowledgeable. We really appreciate this. I can't wait for spring migration news from you. So we'll be setting up a program for that. So with that, I will check one more time. No more questions. And I will thank everyone for coming tonight. We very appreciate you and our audience. And Lisa, thank you once again. Another phenomenal program.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.